right.
Hey, everybody. Welcome again to this Friday midday presentation, our second to last one of our PD Extravaganza. Today, we are with the great Deckful Teacher of the Year, Xueqin, to learn about empowering language learners through guided language acquisition design. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to put them into the chat and we will get to them. And of course, stick around for the feedback form so you can get an entry into our giveaway and also give feedback to Chin on her presentation. Without further ado, Chin, take it away. Give us some, teach us about GLAD.
All right. 你好，大家好. Hello, everyone. This is Qian. You can call me Qian, or my students call me Qian 老师. So 老师 is teacher. I'm really happy here today and share with you about the guided language acquisition design. So before we start, just a quick, just curious if you can put in chat, have you ever heard? I mean, if you have already utilized, that would be amazing. At the end, I would love you can share something you have done with GLAD. But have you heard about GLAD in the past? If you have heard, just type 1 in the chat box. If you have not heard GLAD, just type number 2. So easy, just number 1 or number 2, if you can quickly put in the chat. Just curious on how many people have heard. Oh, good. Thank you for all the response. All right, okay, great. Okay, so we got about half and a half, I can see from the chat. So we're gonna start with guided language acquisition design, which is called Project GLAD. So Project GLAD is actually started in the state of California in the 80s. Is there anyone know the reason why I start in that state? So I actually did a little bit of research because I was curious. I mean, personally, I know in California, we have, immigration, we have a lot. But actually in the 80s, about 6 million people, there was new incomers to start to live in the state of California. And about at least half of the population came in the 80s were immigrants. So we have a lot of family with kids coming into this country, in this state. A lot of them have to learn English. So GLAD is actually started to support the teachers who teach English language learners in the state of California. And then later, because of the effectiveness of the instruction and all the practices GLAD have done, so they have been modified and expanded across the whole country. And not only the English language, the ELL teachers use it, but also the world language teachers, the immersion teachers started to adopt them to apply in their classrooms. So that's where the guided language acquisition design, GLAD, came from. So now with this past 10 years, GLAD has been, I would say, fully expanded to different language programs. And especially for the K-8, they have developed a lot of classroom samples and also worksheets, handout with actual teacher demo videos, which was really helpful. So the reason why I started to use this in the past 5 years is from the state of Delaware. During our state immersion teacher trainings, our state invite people from other states to give us trainings on GLAD. So we have incorporated and adopt a lot of them to have a deeper understanding in our classrooms through the immersion. So for GLAD strategies, at the end of this session, I will share with you some resources which they have step-on-step tells you how to embed it or to try each one in your classroom. But basically, the number of strategies is about from 15 to 20 of them. So there's actually a lot of them. But based on what I have tried in my classroom, and I picked out the top 4, I think it's very practical. And those are the ones I would love to share with you guys today. So as you can see here, the first one is pictorial input chart. The second is sentence patterning chart. The third one is story map. And the last one is process grid. So the reason why I pick those 4 because I have tried for this past 4 to 5 years and I have made some changes depends on what I have learned and what I have reflected. So I hope those are helpful. And I think a lot of the ones I have tried, those 4 are the easier one, you can quickly pick it up and give it a try in the classroom. So let's start with the first one, pictorial input chart. So as we can see from the name, picture, so we're going to use picture and it's building the schema visually. So there is a brain imprinting. While you are introduced to your lesson, your book, with the picture comes in, it's really helps students to not only understand the content, but also build a strong connection between the words or between the vocabulary with the lesson or with the book itself. So it gives student access to the core curriculum in a pictorial manner. So here a quick hands up or hands down. How many of you think you're really good at drawing in front of your students? Or thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm giving a thumb down. Do you think you're really good at drawing in front of your students, or you feel confident of doing that? So myself, okay, thank you. Thank you for the thumbs down. Okay, so myself, 100% not confident. If my students are not there, I'm 100% confident. But when they're there, I'm really afraid of getting student judge on my drawing. So here's a good thing about the picture input charts. So let's look at the steps. So here's step one, as you can see, blank chart paper. So what depends on the lesson or depends on the content you are teaching. You are going to pick whatever you want to draw, but you are going to pre-draw it lightly in pencil. So what's that mean is you're going to lightly sketch on here. So what I have done in the past, it's copy. I literally put whatever that picture I want on my smartboard. And I literally put this chart paper on top of the smartboard and literally just copy, okay? So turns out it's gonna be amazing, but it's super lightly. So when you start your lesson, it seems like you're putting on a blank chart paper. So students think it's just blank paper. Actually, you already copied the picture on there. So step two, so here we have example. It's the teacher introduce the habitat, the food, the interesting facts, and the description of the animal bats. So here we can see, so this is step two, where the teacher has started to talk about the lesson about the bats and start to draw the bats. So after she's done with drawing the bats, she's going to start to label color-coded the big category of the information in her lesson. So in her lesson, there are four main parts: habitat, food, interesting facts, and description. So here is where she color-coded the information as she started to introduce her lesson. So, I mean, in a world language classroom, if we're talking about culture, we're introduce a really symbolic, like a tourist place. This is where maybe we draw that place. And then here is where we talk about maybe the history, the material we use to build that tourist place, and what are the reasons why this place is symbolic. So those are maybe the item you, as an example, you can label on your own chart. So after that, as you can see here, down here in step two, the second picture, there is some more details we can see the teacher have added. So there is when you go in more depth into the lesson, you start to talk more detailed information. So you have summarized the key points underneath each one. In step three, this is the second time. So where a teacher have already done label a lot of things as he or she talk about those. So as we can see here, there are little yellow label cards. So those are the cards that the teacher actually, after she's done, she's able to hand those or take these cards down and hand them to students. And students actually can work in group, trying to rephrase or trying to discuss what they have understand from the teacher's presentation regarding the charts. So later, during like on the third day or the fourth day, the students are really familiar with the text. So teacher can actually take out all those cards and hand them to students to work in small group. This is where they reinterpret the lesson and to show their understanding, and also practice their speaking to improve their proficiency. So here we're gonna see a couple more examples to help us understand better how this can be worked in our classroom. So here we have two examples. The left one is the teacher talk about astronauts. So we can see the example. Here is the job description. As we can see, it's color coded in pink, in gray, in red and blue. And then the blue is average salary, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't know about this. And then the education, the skills you need in order to get to this job. So this is just English. On the right side, I believe it's Spanish. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, please. So here we can see the teacher talk about animal, but what we have seen here, it's not color coded. So that is example where we can see the color coded is definitely better in terms of we can help students to categorize the information. And also later when they practice on their own or in small group, the color coded definitely helps students to remember the parts of the information they were talking. So here we can see it's not really color coded, and a lot of them, I would say it's short or longer sentences. So it's actually not bulletin points. And I think this is where that differentiation comes in, depends on your students' language proficiency. If they're novice level, I would say even shorter than the picture on the left, maybe just give short vocabulary to help students. And if your students are intermediate or even advanced low, this is where, longer sentences come in when you label your pictorial input charts. So here, this is an example from my own classroom when I taught all the little kids. So they were first graders. So I taught 5 years of first graders. So here on the right, I actually put the English translation of what was the text or what was the book I actually taught in that lesson. So the book called Where is Water? So here I'm going to enlarge a little bit so you can see the original text I translate in English. When I taught in class, they were in Chinese. So this is a lesson. So when I taught the lesson, I actually pre-draw what's the water system look like. And as I start to talk, I start to draw, but not spend the whole time to coloring. So trust, this is at the end of the day during dismissal. I ask my kids, anyone want to volunteer, do all this coloring? I'm not spending all that time doing coloring in my class time. As everybody know, we're always short on time. They're still here, right? Okay. All right. So everybody good? If you can give me a thumbs up. Oh, okay, thank you. All right. So getting back to here, we were talking about where is water. So for first graders, so as I making the sketch of the water system, I start to put on those cards. I remember I said after 2 or 3 days of practice, I start to pick students who I know has done a better job of reinterpret or tell the story. I pick those and as my group leaders and to start to lead a group of first graders to practice, to encourage them, but also at the same time to use those character cards to match on the right place on the charts. So after they are really good at it, we do more word study on the character, and then students need to put the character on the right spots on these charts as another activity to practice. So that's one example from the lower elementary. So here, this is another example from the upper elementary, but also I would say it definitely can be used in 6th or even 7th, 8th graders. So this is the upper elementary, our curriculum. It's a lesson. They talk about different buildings, architectural styles across different parts of the world. So this one, we talk about the igloo. So on the right part, this was a text from our textbook. So they talk about igloo, and they did give 2 pictures in the book, but not really a lot supports to help students understand, especially when they are not good at identifying the characters and make connections, words and the meaning. So that's where the picture or another one we can see, the TPR really comes in, really helps students to understand. So here, as I start to sketch them, I start to not only put in those words cards as we can see here. So when we talk about this igloo, we talk about the function. So what igloo can help people to live in there, and also the materials people use to build it, the climate, and also the land format where igloos are built. So as you can see here, I have 4 more larger cards here. So the reason why I didn't label them on the, I did have some label, but the reason why I put more cards because I want students be able to take those cards down later and then put them back on the board when they talk and when they interpret. And this is also another way to show their understanding, like a assessment you can use at the end of this lesson to check student understanding. And also those cards labeled important words, I actually took out from this lesson, from the text. So, and as you can see here, I also try to remember to do the color coded to label them. So later when students do their own writing. So actually at the end of this lesson, we call the unit, student actually did their own research on a kind of architectural style they are interested, and they did their research, and then they actually did their own writing piece. So we're gonna see one of the students' example at the end of this presentation, where after we see how all the GLAD strategies embedded, and then what student can come up with. So this is all about the pictorial input chart. If you have any question, I know Grant is taking notes down on them, and I will try to answer them at the end. So now I'm gonna move on to the second one. This is a sentence patterning chart. So sentence patterning chart, as we can see here, will follow a pattern. So whenever you have something in pattern, it's definitely easier for students to remember or to follow the pattern to come up with their own sentence. So this is definitely a great way to practice new vocabulary and also the syntax of the language you teach. And also I think a big lesson or things I have learned after I have tried to use this, it's really helped my student to change a lot of common mistake I have seen in Chinese, maybe in your language too, but we all know there's a lot of common mistakes students make. Even when they get to intermediate mid or even advanced low, sometimes I can hear that common mistake, which I literally talk to them every single day. Like people are making those common mistakes. So I think the sentence patterning chart is a really great way to help us, to help our student to correct all those little daily mistakes we hear. So that's what I really like about this. And it's introduce and reinforce the parts of speech and the sentence structure through the chant or saying. For friends here who are teach little kids, you definitely can put this into a song. But since now I'm teaching 5th grade and 6th graders, they're not really into chants anymore. So I haven't seen that much. But when I taught 1st grade, yes, there was a lot of dancing, a lot of singing where you can embed this one in. So here, yes, a lot of words. We're not going to spend all time on those. I'm just going to quickly give you a review. So don't worry about reading all those. So the step seems long, but basically, again, color-coded, we're color-coded part of the speech and follow like a table, put them in a table. And we ask the student to talk about different parts of a sentence, the verb, the adjective, the noun, the proverb, all these things. So this is where you're going to have confusion. You're going to have students say, oh, I don't know what is verb in Chinese, or I don't know what is adjective in Spanish. So quick way, some teachers use totally physical response. We can use body languages, but sometimes for some abstract adjectives, it's really hard. We have to use some images. So this is where in here, we also can make some or add some images. And then we're gonna, for some other words, we may have to give a sample sentence and then encourage students to come up their own sentence. So here we're gonna move on to a picture, which is make more sense. So here we can see the one on the left, the yellow one. I think it's Spanish. So here I believe they talk about bear. So here I can understand a little bit from the top. So here I'm gonna enlarge a little bit so you guys can see clearly what are they saying here. So this is a sentence patterning chart, I believe from a lower grade in a Spanish class. So the teacher talked about bear. As you can see the picture here, we have the subject, and I think this is adjective, verb, prepositional words, talk about where the bear is, inside, outside the house. So as you can see here, the teacher are trying to help students understand by adding all those pictures. And another important thing when we are doing this sentence patterning chart is after we give the first example, we definitely want to encourage students start from the second or the third sentence, ask them to give you some words, even if it's the wrong words they are giving you. But it's good you list them on the bottom and talk about them at the end. So this is where that group discussion comes in. Students talk about based on their understanding of what the teacher have done for the first sentence. So down here, I'm gonna move it a little bit. We're gonna see another sentence. So this is in when I taught first grade in the Chinese classroom. So on the top here, I actually did not use the word adjective, verb, or noun. Like I didn't use that specific term. The reason why it's for kindergarten and first graders, it's really hard for them to understand the word, verb, noun in Chinese. So what I did is instead of saying subject, I use the word people. And then I use the word time. I use the word location or place. I use the word, those two, I did use verb and noun, but I try to make it easier for the little kids to understand. So here the sentence is, so in Chinese, the parts of the speech is different in English. So in English, we're gonna say, I eat popcorn at night at home. So you see the location, you say the location at the end of your sentence in English. But in Chinese, a really common mistake I have heard students all the way from novice low to intermediate high is a lot of them still like to say the way in English. They're gonna say, I eat popcorn at home. But actually in Chinese, it should be I at home eat popcorn. So location, the words has to be in the middle or even towards the beginning of the sentence, not at the end. But students always confuse this with English because they like to directly translate everything from English to Chinese. Or I believe here, a lot of you notice that in your classroom, like in Spanish, French, or German, your students want to translate directly whatever English to your target language. And this is where that big mistake or the common mistake students make. And those are not hard concepts. Those are actually still pretty easy ones we can correct. But I have a hard time. So with this patterning chart, it's literally force them to put those words in the correct order. They have to follow this. And once they really grasp it, I start not using this sentence patterning chart. But for my strugglers, I always keep a copy for them in their notebook. So I ask them always pull this out when you check your sentence. And even when they get to intermediate level, they have to type in Chinese. I always ask them, go back, think about what is the structure in Chinese. So this is where I think the sentence patterning chart really helped. Another question or another struggle I had when I started to first implement is, so students have a hard time with adjective or words to talk about time. So when they talk about time, they have limited words. All they know is morning, noon, night, or 3 o'clock. So this is where I was like, how do I help them to at least first have about 10 words to choose from, and then they can come up more sentence. So this is where I had a struggle when I first implement sentence patterning chart. It was easy to tell them, okay, this is what you'll follow. But the problem is they don't have that vocabulary. So they know how to do it, but they don't have it. So this is where I learned. So in my classroom on the word wall, I categorize, color-coded the words, and I give them a lot of choices. So on the back, some of them have pictures, some of them do not. And the words here, we have adjective, and then we have the verb, we have the noun, and then this one, it's all the words describe things, so measuring words. So I color-coded them. And as you can see here, some of them have sticky notes. So those sticky notes are the ones the students came up with later. Once they really understood what was verb, what are adjectives. So they start to give me example. And I ask them to roll them out and then put them under that category. So this is where you have to do a little bit, scaffolding to help students to get to there. They know how to say the sentence, but they don't have that vocabulary. So this is one thing I learned. We have to add on top of what sentence patterning chart asks us to do, or when we try in the classroom, you do need to provide students these resources. It doesn't have to be this way. So another way I have done in the classroom, I have two examples. So on the left, it's called lift the flag, sentence patterning chart. And on the right, it's fill in the blank. They look similar, but little bit different when you apply in the classroom. So I'm going to expand and look at the one on the left first. So here, this is something I'm really proud of because I created on my own. And hopefully I can give you guys a blank template later so you can do it on your own. So what I have done is, as you can see here, the dotted line. So what students have done is this bottom part, it's a paper they glue on their notebook. And on the top, they glue this top part. And they use the scissors to cut off the dotted line part. So what that end up is this part gonna be on the top. So they can choose the words from each part of the speech. And then they lift it up and they can write their own sentence down below. So this really helps them to follow the sentence structure, but also for the struggling or the new incoming students, they already have a list of words they can choose from. So they don't have to feel stressed or not confident because they don't even have the words, how to say it. So here I put the sounds in Chinese, which is pinyin, and also I put the words. And for each category, I give a lot of options for students to choose from. So here we have we have I have all the family member, I even have the dog and the cat, sometimes can be the subject of the sentence. So for the time, I have the words for year, month, for morning, noon, night, for day, for what time during the day. Here for location, I put a different location. And for this category, I put some picture since those are verb. So this is one I have found really helpful to use in the classroom. And it's not just for the basic sentence structure, like what I said earlier. In Chinese, we see me and my friend, morning, in the school, eat breakfast. This is the correct order. So even for some more complicated sentence structure, I also create this and use this to help my students. So on the right side, as you can see here, I did the color coded. This is when we do the typing online for fifth graders. So this is a sentence called sometimes in Chinese. So they follow this order to come up two sentences together, form a long sentence to describe sometimes I do something and sometimes I do something else. So those are the two examples I have used in upper elementary, which are from let's see, novice high to intermediate high student who have used this, and it's really helped them to correct all those commonly mistake where they are not putting the parts of the speech in the correct place. Okay, so the next one is story map. So story map, it's again, when we think about GLAD, I think you guys have noticed, we have a lot of visual support. So here for story map, we are also provide a visual retelling of the story. And another great thing I think about story map is we are introduce the key elements of narrative writing to students. We guide students to pull those information out so they're be able to talk about what happened in the story in different parts. What happened in the beginning of the story, what happened in the middle of the story, what happened at the end of the story. So we really go into depth to talk about a lot of details when we talk about narrative writing. And this later helps students to form their own writing. Okay, so here are the steps of how you do a story map. So actually, they look more like graphic organizer. So first, you're going to choose a familiar story that features a clear problem or a solution. So in the story, maybe there are two characters, they have arguments, blah, blah, something. So you pick a story first, you do a demonstration. So you pull up your own graphic organizers and you talk about the key elements of the story. So when I taught in first grade, first we need to know is what is even the name of the author, the name of the illustrator, the title of the book. So those things looks super, super simple. But when you think about 6, 7 years old, they need to learn this terminology to be able to see what is the name of the book, what is the title, or what is the name of the author, or even the word illustrator. So this is where story map really helps students to understand. So after a whole class or a small group read aloud of the story, I pull up the organizer, which is a story map, and we talk about all those elements. And here we also, for like novice level learners, we need to give them some more clear examples even before you do this. So here on the right side, we can see there is a example in English. As we said, GLAD first started to support English language learners. So here I'm going to enlarge, we can see more clearly what is happening in this story map. So here on the top, we have setting, so the story happened on the beach, and then we have the characters. So we have Ben, and then we have the steel pump, we have the granddad, we have Steel's mom, and then down here we have what happened. So those are the main events happening in the story. So this is what the teacher did, and at the end it said how did it end. So we have the ending. The student need to give a summarize the sentence about what happened at the end of the story. So in terms of this graphic organizer, it can be differentiated, depends on your student proficiency, or even the way you prefer. It doesn't have to be this way. So I'm gonna show you what I have done in my class. Looks really different, but still we touched on the key elements of in a narrative writing. So here we can see this is one of the graphic organizer I did for story map. So here on the top, I screenshots of the cover of the book. It's said making snowman. And here we have a big 4 ovals, which represent different elements of the narrative writing or this book. So the pink one is the character. So here this one, I asked my student type in the information. So they typed in older brother and younger sister. And here for the yellow oval, we have locations. So we have it's outside of the house. And then for the blue one, it's a time. So the student typed it was in winter, it's in December. The last one, the green one, it's making snowman, which is the event or what happened, the action or the event. In the middle here, I have listed 3 things. The first thing is 书名, it's the title of the book. The second one is the name of the author. And then the last one, 绘图者, means illustrator. So those are the key elements of when we start to introduce a book or a story. So here you can see there are triangles with bubble box with time. So what I have also done when we do story map online, it's for the students who are not good at typing, they have the option to record their answers. So this is where you can also to check students who are not good at writing, but they also have an opportunity to prove their understanding. So those rectangle boxes are student recording of the answer. So here on the left side, this is, sorry, let me drag again. Okay, so this one is just a little bit different version of what's the one we just saw. So this one, I printed them out and students have this one in their own Chinese folder. So they use this whenever they start to read a new story, they put down their own information and keep to record. So they get multiple copies and it's color coded. So it helps students to keep track, and when they share with their friends, this is a good organizer where it helps them to refresh if they forgot what they have read. This is where they take out this paper, they have their recordings of what they organize from the story, so they can take this out quickly and be able to share. And at the end of here, you can do a little bit differentiation based on what you want. So as we saw earlier on the English example, it did have what happened in the middle, in the beginning, and in the end of the story. So probably for you, you can put this as what happened at the end. But for me, I asked my student to summarize one thing they learned, or summarize the important thing they learned from this book, or it can be the main point they learned from the story. So this can be it can be, I would say, tweaked, depends on your students. So another thing I have done in the past, especially for lower grade kids, is I do need to pick a familiar book. So what I have to say is it's easier if you put something like Harry Potter and then you start to talk about those terminology, it's really easy to make that connection. So definitely pick a book in the first language. I think it's even just a cover. That's where it helped to introduce those basic like author, illustrator, name of the book. And here, this is actually one of the resource I print out for students. So remember when we talk about, when we use story map, we're trying to introduce key elements. So character, where did the story happen, or location, when did it happen, or what was the events, what happened in the middle and beginning. So when you talk about this, students need that vocabulary. If they don't have the vocabulary, they can't give you detailed information. Even if they understand the pictures in the story, they be able to interpret, but they just don't have that vocab. So this is where I do need to give them a list of different vocabulary, or I ask the student to give me, what are the words you think we can use to describe locations? Or what are the words we use to describe characters? So those kind of supports, I normally print them out big, put them on my wall, and also print them smaller to give students to put in their own folder. So they have this, those kind of vocabulary cards to help them to come up their own story maps. And later, when students start their own writing, they use story map to help them prepare their own writing. So when they start their own story, they can say, okay, I'm gonna pick my main characters. I'm gonna say, okay, the story happens where, and then what happened, and was there arguments, or was there anything? Even when they write their own journal, something happened over the weekend. So this is a good organizer later to help them to get their thoughts together in a more organized way. So here, this is still story map, but totally different from what we have learned or what you have seen from what I have shared. So this is called sequencing the key events through story map. So this is actually, I would say, a my own reinvented view. I shouldn't say that, but based on story map. But I definitely did it on my own. I want to challenge my students more in the upper elementary. So here, as we saw earlier, for story map, you didn't really have picture or a lot of picture when you put the scenes in the order, but here I gave them the picture from the book. So this is definitely after we finished that original story map. So students really knew what was happening in the story. So I pick out the important or the main events, what happened in the middle, in the beginning and the end. And then I put them in the wrong order. So what I ask the student to do is they have to put the picture in the correct order. So as here on the top, the student label, this happened, this was the second, this happened at the end, and this happened first, and this was the third event. So first thing they have to do is put the picture in the correct order by label the number 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top. And then the second thing is where I ask them to describe during this event, what were the character, or another way in the parentheses, I said, who were they, or who are the people? And then they need to tell me the location this event happened, in the store, on the street, in the park. And another way in the parentheses, I put where was it? And then the last one was event, or another way to say it's what happened, what did they do? So this is where students have to type complete sentence to tell me what they understand or what they interpret after they learn that lesson. So for differentiation, for students who are struggle, they can record, or they can just type short phrase. They do not need to type complete sentences. But this was more towards the end of that lesson, and also when I did the review at the end of the year. So I really expecting majority of the students be able to type complete sentence to describe those in the story map. So this is just a differentiated, or what I have did differently, based on the story map, the originally, which if we go back here, it's just a basic graphic organizer. But you can actually change a lot, depends on your student proficiency and where they are at the different parts of the school year. All right, yay, we're almost here, guys. Last one. And then you guys are free to go, ready? All right, so last one, process grade. So this one is categorized information, but also color coded. So it supports students to do informational writing, and even when they do informational reading, if the lesson talk about connect to science or math or engineering, some of our lessons in the older curriculum, we had a lot of Chinese curriculum, the literacy parts, the lessons were actually connect to STEM areas. So this was really helpful to help students to categorize all that information and help them to practice reading for specific information. And later when they read on their own, with process grade, they are able to pick the important information I asked them to, or they need. So here, let's look at process grade. So process grade, you use it to categorize the important concepts from the content, you color code it, and also you choose students to provide information. So this is where after maybe you give an example, students start to pick information and see if they can put the information in the correct group in the process grade. So students can use this to get their own writing. So here, let's look at the example. So here, both examples are in English. So on the left here, okay. So on the left here, we have all the sea creatures. So here on the first column, we can see it's seahorse, orca, and great white shark. And then the second column, they talk about description of those animals. The third column is the food, what kind of food they eat. The next column, the enemy they have. The next one is when the animals are young, what they look like, what they do. And then the last column is interesting facts about those animals. So this is how they categorize the information. And on the right here, we have another really basic one for, I would say, for kindergarten. So they talk about different tools we have in the house and who use it and what it is used for. So in our classroom, when we teach basic words, maybe in the house, at school, or supplies, we can even put them into categorize. The information itself is actually really easy, but it's more we introduce this terminology in the target language. This is where we want students to get. So students definitely know what are those, but it's just teaching that words. This is where process grade really help. So here, this is the example I have done in my classroom for intermediate low level or intermediate low to high. So students learn the lesson. So this is where that lesson earlier we talk about. So in the lesson, we talk about three kinds of architectural styles in different parts of the world. So we talk about igloo. We talk about the house you would see on water. So in Thailand. So here you have the picture. And then we also talk about the special cave house in China, in northern parts of China. In some regions, we have houses that are built in cave. So those are three different kinds of house. So when we introduced those concepts to students, we use process grade to categorize those information from the book. So first column, it's the name of that house. We have igloo, we have Yao Dong, which is the name of that cave house in China. So first column, it's the name. Second column, we color code. It's the material we use to build those houses. So when we do the lesson, we can actually give students different colors of marker to ask them to circle or highlight those words in the book. Or we can do vice versa the different way. We can highlight them to show students, depends on your student proficiency. And then the column in the middle in purple, those are functions. So for igloo, it helps people from the wind, from cold, and you can store food in there. So those are the function what this house specially can do to help people to live in that area. And then the column in purple is climates. So talk about during what months or what time of the year the temperature is high or low. And the last column is the name of the countries where we often see those kinds of houses. So this is what I use in the classroom when we categorize information from this informational reading piece. So here, when the student came to the end of that lesson, after they learned, I asked them to research about the kind of architecture style they want to do on their own and be able to come up their own writing. So one of the students did Queenslander. So it's the name of that city or state, I believe, is called Queensland in Australia. The name of that house or that architectural style is also called Queenslander. So the house looked like this. The student actually did a craft. So we also did a little bit collaboration with the art class, with the art teacher. So this is where when we look at our 5C, we have collaboration with different subjects of teachers in our building. First, the student did their own graphic organizer after they did their research. So I'm going to enlarge and show you what they did in the graphic organizer. So this is my student's graphic organizer when they typed. So on the top here, this is the name of that architectural style, which is called Queenslander. So Quenshilan, this is a name. Also the name of her writing piece. And then here, the blue part is her beginning part, which she have a summarized sentence. And the right part, the part in red is her ending part. And then here she has 3 subtitles. So her first subtitle is climate. So she talked about during what time of the year in Australia in this part it's flooded and it's pouring and the weather and the climate. Her second subtitle is function. So when people live here, it help you from the heat and also help you if it's pouring, raining. This is where she talks about the function of the house. And her last subtitle, it's a material used to build those houses. So after she put those in, she started to write them. So here it's part of her writing pieces. So she stapled them. So this is one page where she talked about the function of those house and with the craft on the top. So here on the left, I put the English translation of what my students wrote in English. So she talked about the function, building material, climate. And she also has an ending sentence. She said, I think Queenslander is a very interesting architecture. Its name sounds like the name of the place. When I grow up, I want to go to Australia and live in a house with Queenslander style. So this was her ending sentence. So this is a final project of what she did or what the student did in my class after we embedded all of those GLAD strategies. So here we finally come to the end of this presentation. So I shared 3 websites where if you click, they actually take you to all the GLAD strategies with examples. So here I'm going to quickly show you. So this is the first website. It's Pasco School District. So they are phenomenal since they shared a lot of free resources. So when you click each one, they actually give you a picture with steps, how you do inquiry chart, how you do graphic organizer example, how you do comparative input. So there's a lot of strategies. As we said, today we talk about 4. So the second website, this is really also helpful. So this is from that same school district. This is a PDF document. So in here, they actually tell you step by step how you embedded some of them. And another great thing here, you can see they give you a lot of visual support of how this look like in the real classroom. So it's a huge document, about like 64 pages. So definitely don't spend all that time. Start with some basic, try a couple. I would say sentence patterning chart, I can see where it can be quickly embedded in a lot of our classroom. So here they have a lot of example of how to embed those when you teach about history, you teach about culture, or you talk about part of the sentence, you talk about grammar. When you start teach a lesson, you have inquiry charts. So those are really helpful resources. I hope you can take a look at them later if you want to start to try. So here we're come to the end, which is notice and wonder. And here I'm gonna let Grant, if you want to share, is there any common question you notice from the chat I can answer?
Oh my gosh. I keep unmuting and starting my video and I can't seem to get it. Okay, there we go. No, I didn't. Yeah, Johanna, I will post the links to the presentation shortly on Sketch as always. The slides might already be uploaded. I have to double check, but yeah, you'll definitely have access to Chin's presentation. And if you have any questions for Chin at this time, please feel free to ask. We thank Chin from the bottom of our hearts for presenting with us. It was a wonderful presentation. I'm glad this was, as they say in Chinese, 太棒了,真的太棒了, so good.
Yeah.
We really appreciated it. And like I said, if you have any questions at this time, feel free to ask.
Yes, just unmute, guys. Unmute anything you were not sure, or if there anything you think I didn't share behind the scene. There's definitely a lot of preparation, but some of them I would say it's gonna take that long time.